Chicago police say nearly 70 people were shot during one of the most violent weekends on record. At least 12 people were killed in gun-related violence, and police say that there were a total of 33 shootings between Friday and Sunday. That's according to a report by the Chicago Tribune. At least 1,700 people have been shot in the city this year alone. Well, in a press conference on Monday, the mayor of the city, Rahm Emanuel, blamed the violence on too many guns.
You can talk about the weather, but the weather didn't pull the trigger. And you can talk about jobs, and they count, but in parts of the city where there aren't jobs, people did not pull a trigger. There are values. There are too many guns on the street, too many people with criminal records on the street, and there is a shortage of values about what is right, what is wrong, what is acceptable, what is condoned, and what is condemned.
Father Michael Pfleger is the senior pastor of the faith community at St. Sabina Roman Catholic Church. He joins me now from Chicago. Father Pfleger, thank you very much for finding the time to talk with us. You know, Chicago has a reputation of being one of America's most violent cities. I mean, you look in 2016, just that year alone, there were 4,500 shootings. We're talking about victims, 762 murders, 762 people dead. What are we not understanding about this situation?
Well, I think a number of things. I think we have to hold elected officials accountable for a lack of resources. Our neighborhoods are tremendously neglected. If you look at the neighborhoods where the most of violence is taking place in the city, you find the same scenario. Double-digit unemployment, underfunded, underperforming schools, most coming back from incarceration with no options, poverty, lack of economic development, lack of resources for the communities. Then there's proliferation of guns. And I think the division between police and law enforcement and the community is worse than I've ever seen it. On top of all that, you add the force that solving only 15% of the homicides in Chicago get solved. What's wrong with that? There's no consequence. You have a majority of a chance of getting off with a murder in Chicago than getting caught. And the combination of all that makes that a deadly city.
You know, we hear the term enough is enough after every single shooting, whether it's a high school shooting in Parkland, Florida or Las Vegas. Do you think that this problem is bigger than Chicago, and is there a resolution?
Well, it is. It's very much bigger than Chicago, but I think Chicago has to deal with what it's not doing right. The guns in this country, America has a love affair with guns, and the NRA continues to buy and own politicians, so we don't have any really responsible gun ownership. I've been trying to get people to title guns just like cars for the last 15 years. Also, you look at the poverty sections in all the major cities in this country, and you find many neighborhoods that look like third world countries. We're not equaling the playing field. We're not giving the resources, the opportunities, the development, the good education. But there also is ownership, you know, that in the communities, people have to be accountable for what's going on and saying that we're not going to tolerate this violence. So it's on every level. The elected officials, I think the law enforcement and the community, everybody has to do their part. But unless everybody is doing it, no one, you know, we keep saying we can't police our way out of it, but we're not getting the resources or the opportunities beyond the police. I hear today there's going to be an announcement of adding more police to the neighborhoods where there's most violence. Again, that's good. That's only one piece of it. It's making those neighborhoods stable and giving opportunities to people in those neighborhoods so that we can hold people accountable.
You talk about holding people accountable. Officials of your city say that the murder rate is actually down 23% when you compare it to this point last year. The former mayor of New York City, Rudy Giuliani, had this to say about your current mayor, Rahm Emanuel, saying Chicago murders are a direct result of one party, Democratic rule for decades. Should Mayor Rahm Emanuel step down at this point?
Well, you know, Mayor Rahm Emanuel is in the middle of an election, which will take place next February. I think if the city of Chicago wants him to resign, they can resign him next February. Is he going to step down between now and then? Absolutely not. He's in an election bid. But the Chicago can resign him in the election. That's up to the citizens of Chicago to decide if we want him out and who do we want in. I think that's what got to be spoken about across Chicago right now and deciding in the voting. But I think also, as far as Giuliani and what he's saying, first of all, he said he was endorsing Gary McCarthy for mayor. He didn't even say his name right, spelled his name wrong, spelled Emmanuel's name wrong. I think Giuliani has enough problems keeping the lies going for the president right now. He shouldn't worry about Chicago.
But as a community leader, Father, do you believe that Rahm Emanuel needs to resign?
I don't believe he needs to resign. I don't ever believe a leader should resign unless there's a scandal about them. I believe citizens should resign politicians. And I think for too long, we have given a pass to people, both Democrats and Republicans, and not held them accountable. And I think there's aldermen that have not been held accountable. I think the mayor. I think that there is a major move in this city saying, do we want something different? And what are the people running for office going to promise? Not some idle election campaign literature. I'm talking about what are the concrete things they're going to do. And I think the city, both coming up in November with the governor election, and I think in February and March with the mayoral election, we have to decide as a city who's going to come in and help us make a difference. We need sound, strong leadership that's committed to change the scenario in Chicago. Chicago is the tale of two cities. Look at this weekend. We had 120,000 people downtown with Lollapalooza enjoying themselves, partying, drinking, and getting high. On the south and the west side, we had over 70 people shot and many of them killed. That's a tale of two cities, and we better address it.
Father, during his campaign, President Trump used Chicago's violence in his speeches and also his tweets. You've personally invited the president to visit your city to talk about gun violence, not once, but actually three times. And the president has not accepted those invites.
Absolutely.
Has the White House responded to your calls for help? And what do you want President Trump to do as a religious leader yourself?
Well, what I want him to do is, first of all, if you're serious, instead of just tweeting about Chicago or dropping it in the middle of some press statement or in some rally, if you care about Chicago, come on out to Chicago. Come on out to Chicago, hear what needs to be done, and give us the resources. Chicago is a disaster area. Just like you're sending resources to where there's fires, where there's hurricanes. Well, we got a fire and a hurricane in Chicago. It's called violence. So come in here if you're serious and bring the resources. If you're not serious, then stop talking about it, because blood is on our streets. Our children are dying. This is not something that can be part of some campaign slogan. I've always believed that Trump's major, thing is he wants to embarrass Obama's hometown. If that's your motive, fine. Well, then you can embarrass him by coming in and making a difference. Come in and bring the resources to help Chicago out. If that's what it's all about, I don't know what his motive is, but I'm tired of his senseless tweets and comments in rallies, but never doing a thing to really help Chicago. Come and help us. A flag at my church flies upside down, stating there's a state of emergency in Chicago. Come help us. Stop talking about us.
Couldn't imagine a more powerful battle cry. Father Matthew Pfleger, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Rena. I'm sorry.